So with Bitcoin holding above 90k despite some bad data last week, we look to be coiling up for a potential big move to the upside, and there's several institutions calling for not just a six-figure Bitcoin but a seven-figure Bitcoin in the not too distant future. So in this video we'll go over some of those calls as well as what could happen with the FOMC this week and some big levels for BTC and altcoins to hold to remain bullish. So let's get into it. So let's start with some of the bold predictions that a few institutions have been coming out with over the last couple of months. So starting with Cathie Wood, who is the CEO of ARK, and they suggest that Bitcoin could reach $1.5 million per coin by 2030. And if we scroll down this article, you can see that their primary bull case, as I say, is 1.5 million by the end of the decade. Wood's firm also laid out alternative scenario, a base case of $710,000 and a bear case of $300,000. If we scroll a little bit further down as well, its most optimistic supplementary modeling, ARK, suggests Bitcoin could rise even higher, up to $2.4 million under more aggressive assumptions about the adoption rates. So some huge numbers being thrown out there, which would be absolutely crazy. Of course, currently, Bitcoin's all-time high price sitting around $108,000. So you're looking at over a 10x from there up to over $1 million, which does sound insane. However, you've got to remember just 5 years ago, so that would be in 5 years. 5 years ago today was 2020. And of course, if you ignore the COVID lows of $3,000, we were at around $10,000 at some point in 2020. So we've gone from $10,000 to $100,000 in 5 years. Why can we not go from $100,000 up to $1 million in another 5 years, especially as more adoptions come in? Obviously, we've seen the ETFs and larger institutions start to step in, and something that I'm going to come on to in a second as well, which could open the floodgates further. Let's move on to the next one. So Matt Hougan, Chief Investment Officer of Bitwise, again thinks that we could reach $1 million by 2029. And again, another reason for that could be the store of value argument versus gold. So as you can see here, Matt Hougan argues that if Bitcoin manages to surpass gold's market cap, it could surpass $500,000 to reach $1 million. Bitcoin will need to continue gaining market share, especially among investors looking for more modern and efficient alternatives to gold. And then the final piece of the puzzle as well, which could bring even more capital into Bitcoin. Here, Fidelity says that pension funds could be eyeing crypto following its ETF success. And if we just scroll down, you can see US pension funds hold more than $4 trillion in capital. So even a small allocation to Bitcoin could drive inflows significantly. So we've got several reasons why a lot more capital could be flowing into Bitcoin. You've got the ETFs, you've got pension funds, and you've also got that trust as well. If we scroll down further in this article, pension funds have traditionally held a more conservative and risk-averse approach to their interest in cryptos, so their interest in cryptocurrency has been limited. Bitcoin ETFs are now proving to be stable enough for these funds and potentially even wider mainstream adoption. So the future certainly looks very bright. However, this is probably a fair few years off. As I say, most people targeting these huge seven-figure plans for Bitcoin in around 5 years, around 2030, so the end of the decade. So let's take a look at some more present day stuff. Let's take a look at what could be happening with the interest rates following the FOMC this week, and then getting some charts, including some altcoins. So taking a look at what's happening around the rest of the world. So far this year, both the ECB, which is the European Central Bank, and the Bank of England have been cutting interest rates, and they look to continue to do so in their respective upcoming meetings as well, which is going to increase liquidity and be bullish for risk assets. The reason being is because if there's high interest rates, then people with large amounts of cash, pension funds, etc., are going to be more likely to park their cash in high interest rate returns, which is a much safer option as opposed to going into the markets. Whereas obviously when those interest rates are cut, then that money needs to find return from somewhere, and so it's more likely to go into the market. So what impact is this going to have on the FOMC and the US interest rate? Well, at the moment, it's currently a 97% chance that interest rates are going to hold and there's not going to be another cut. There is that 3% chance that it might surprise the market with a cut, which would probably be very bullish indeed. However, as you can see, 3% chance, not very likely. Now, the important thing that to keep an eye on Wednesday when the FOMC happens isn't necessarily the interest rate, especially with the likelihood being so high that we're not going to see any change. It's actually going to be Jerome Powell's, the chair of the FOMC, his speech afterwards. Is his attitude going to be hawkish or dovish? And then the market is going to react to that. So let's now go take a look at some charts and take a look at some levels that both Bitcoin and altcoins are going to need to hold if we see some volatility later this week. So just before we get into the charts, if you are enjoying the video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Helps the channel grow, and we really do appreciate it. And not only that, drop in the comments below what you think the price of Bitcoin is going to be, not just the end of this year, but by 2030. We obviously went over some of those bold predictions earlier in the video. I want to know what you think. Can we hit that magical 1 million mark by 2030? So with that out of the way, let's get into the charts. So Bitcoin, as we spoke about last week, nice strong reclaim of this weekly range low of around 91k. Still looks pretty bullish, although the only concerning thing in my opinion is the fact that we did not get a weekly candle close above this level here of 96.5k, which was the previous highs or the highs that we dropped from the low high we formed in February. So had a little wick above, didn't manage to close above it. It's not too bad as long as we don't get a weekly close back below 91k. We're looking good, but would have obviously been preferable to get that weekly close above 96.5. But outside of that, not looking too bad at all. If we go down to the daily time frame, so let's just get rid of that weekly level for now. So I talked about this level last week, the fact that we needed to hold this daily level of 95.6k as support. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. We see this deviation. We've come back into this sort of accumulation range that we were in last week. Didn't manage to get that daily candle close above the mid-range of 98.6. However, as I say, same as on the higher time frame, still looks pretty good. As I talked about last week, in terms of a pullback, a nice entry would be in around this weekly and daily range low of 91.3k. It's got confluence with this daily fair value gap, which we talked about last week, and the daily moving average 21 as well. And as you can see down the bottom here, this indicator is an RSI and momentum indicator. You can find a free version of it. It's the LC trend and momentum indicator. The pro version comes with access to premium as well. Go check out our website if you want to check that out. But as you can see, green trend bar, which means we are bullish, and we're above the RSI 50 as well, which is another good metric to keep an eye on. So all looking good as long as we don't see a high time frame close below that 91.3k area, and any dip into that area will probably be a good opportunity to buy or go long. The last level you really don't want to see a close below is this 88.5k, which was obviously the previous resistance. You really don't want to see us get below that, because that means we are no longer making high highs and high lows. Then we are retracing this entire move from the 21st of April. But one level at a time, one day at a time. At the moment, all looking good. If we do see a pullback into the FOMC, then 91.5k should be a nice level to bid. Let's take a look at Ethereum before we move on to a couple of altcoins. Again, higher time frame. Unfortunately, nothing really happening with Ethereum, as you can see. Bit of a lackluster, pretty much a doji last week, and not really moved at all today. In terms of higher time frame levels, we're really in the middle of nowhere between 2k and 1500. On the daily time frame, the level I talked about last week needed to see a close above 1865. Then that opens the door up to a move to 2k. We haven't seen that. As you can see, resistance acting as resistance. We are, however, still above the daily moving average 21 and the RSI 50 just about, and we've got this daily fair value gap acting as support. Now again, similar with BTC's level of 88k, this daily fair value gap, or the bottom of it around 1660, is the top of this previous resistance area. You don't want to see us dip back into this accumulation area, because we may well see us retest 1530 and maybe even lower. But as I say, for now, above the moving average 21, holding this daily fair value gap as support and above the RSI 50, all looking good. If we can see a daily candle close above 1865, then I think that opens the door up to 2k. Nothing to talk about in terms of ETH BTC and Bitcoin dominance. As you can see, ETH BTC completely flat and Bitcoin dominance still grinding higher. However, there are some altcoins that are performing well against BTC. Now, on the whole, if you take a look at this watch list here, you can see that even though BTC is down 0.5%, some altcoins aren't down that bad, and in fact some are even in the green. If you scroll down further, we've got the alt BTC pairs, and they're not doing too bad. Normally, if Bitcoin's down, half of a percent or 1%, then altcoins are at least down 2 and 3%. You can see, most of the time, or in this case, most alts aren't in that situation. So the four that are currently standing out to me are SUI, Solana, Hype, and Tau. So let's take a look at SUI on the higher time frames. We covered this last week. As you can see, rejection from this weekly area of resistance at around $4. However, if we go down to the daily time frame, came into this area of interest that we talked about last week, this daily fair value gap between $3.26 and $3.08. Would like to see a deeper pullback to retest the moving average 21 and fill out this daily fair value gap, test the bottom of it. However, it's not essential at the moment, still looking pretty good, and as you can see, in a clear uptrend, making higher highs and higher lows. You can see this is a nice strong move, potential another higher low in here. Of course, it could come a little bit deeper. I wouldn't want to see it lose this next daily fair value gap here at $2.90. I think this is an important level of support here. So at the moment, all looking good, trending upwards. And if we take a look at the SUI BTC pair as well, that is looking really good. So let's go to the higher time frames. Again, as I talked about last week, wanted to see a monthly candle close above this clean level of SR at 3579. You can see we just about got that, close at about 3700, and actually you can see it's already had somewhat of a bullish retest, so far. Of course, the month is very early indeed. Weekly time frame, talked about this weekly resistance at 3783. As you can see, that is still holding as resistance for now, but we are above the moving average 21, which is good. On the daily time frame, once again, as we spoke about last week, perfect retest of not only the bottom of this daily fair value gap, but the moving average 21 as well. Perfect wick into that. So this looks really good on the BTC pair. So SUI at the moment, a standout alt, and looking very good even against BTC. Next then, let's take a look at Solana. Not the best looking chart. We have reclaimed $115, which looks good. However, we are below the RSI 50 down here, as you can see, and we are below the moving average 21 as well on those high time frames. So not a great look on the weekly. On the daily though, looks slightly better. Let's just zoom out a little bit here. So we are currently sat at the bottom of daily fair value gap and the moving average 21 and the RSI 50. So this looks like a really nice area for a potential long. Got green trend bar as well, so that looks great. In terms of resistance, you can see we've got this heavy resistance here at 152. Need to see a daily close above that, and that opens the door to a nice quick move, potentially up to $180. So the important levels to break: resistance here at 152. We could see a move up to 179, 180. However, if we lose this fair value gap and the moving average 21 and the RSI 50, then this is the level we need to hold, 135. If we lose that, then we could revisit that weekly level of 115. So in the middle of no man's land at the moment. You might want to wait for confirmation to break 152 before going long. However, at the moment, actually looks like a pretty good area for a long, potentially with your stop loss just below today's wick, or this wick that we formed on the 30th of April. Look to break 152 and then ride it up to 180. Sol BTC, let's take a quick look at that. Again, not the best. It's pretty flat. As you can see, not really trending, just going sideways. The main level to watch is this daily level here at 14,820. You can see a bit of some sort of head and shoulders going on here. Nice deviation, break below, reclaim. So you don't really want to see the Sol BTC chart close below 14,820. But at the moment, looks like a good spot. It's not looking detrimental to Sol USDT. So as long as this doesn't nuke, then Sol USDT should be absolutely fine and in a fairly good spot for a long. Hype USDT, again, you can see a nice strong trend, higher lows all the way up and making higher highs as well. Potentially a high low being formed here at this day level of support at around $20. Could be looking for a move up to this next level of resistance here at about $25. So again, trending above the moving average 21, trending above the RSI 50, green trend bar. You could look at a potential long here with stop loss below this wick from the 30th of April. So that's looking at about 4%, and then your TP up here at 25%. That's about a 5-to-1. That doesn't look like too bad of a trade at all. Let's quickly revisit Solana actually and take a look at what that risk reward looks like. So again, if you were to enter here with your stop loss just below that wick from a few days ago, looking at about a 3% loss. Up to your first TP, which would be this level here, that's still looking at about a 2 to 1, up to 152, 153, and then if you're going to ride it all the way up to 180, then that suddenly becomes a almost 8 to 1 risk reward ratio, which looks pretty good in my personal opinion. Finally, actually, let's take a look at Hype USDT versus BTC. Again, big level on the weekly time frame that we conquered here. You can't really see a value on it, but you can see clear S&R level there, which we've reclaimed. And on the daily, once again, you can see we are making a clear uptrend of higher highs and higher lows. So putting a nice low here at the beginning of April, and as you can see, higher highs, higher lows, looking very good indeed. Potentially a higher low here. As you can see, this level of support, as long as it's above the moving average 21 and the RSI 50, which is, then this should continue to trend quite nicely. And then finally, let's take a look at Tau. Let's look at the USDT pair first, and then take a look at the BTC pair. Once again, important level to hold in terms of support is this $317 level, which coincides quite nicely with the EMA 21 as well. So once again, above the RSI 50, green trend bar, above the EMA 21, and above this level of support. As long as we hold above there, looking good. In terms of a long, I personally would like to see a retest of either the EMA 21 or $317. Either that, we'll wait for a break of these current highs at around $377, and then I would probably be targeting these highs up here. You can see all these wicks up here. I'd probably move it a little bit lower to around 466, which would be a 22% move, which wouldn't be too bad at all. As I say, if you aim lower, maybe if we come down, retest the moving average 21 instead and get a nice bounce off that, you can have your stop loss somewhere just below this daily level, and then you'd look at TP1 there, which would be about almost a 3 to 1 risk reward, and then up to 466, that's looking more like a 7 to 8 to 1 risk reward, which is very nice indeed. And then finally, Tau BTC, again, if we take a look at the higher time frames, reclaimed a really nice level here at 3,650 sats. You can see this was the lows, or the all-time lows, back in June, July 2024. Held as support all the way through the beginning of this year until we lost it in March. Reclaimed it, holding as support. We do have the EMA 21 and the RSI 50 just above us, so you might want to wait for that final confirmation of a weekly candle close above those two, and then it should be all systems go for Tau. If we take a look at the daily time frame, once again, you can see clear structure of higher highs and higher lows, as you can see, and we're forming quite a nice base here just above the EMA 21 and above the RSI 50 as well. So in terms of a long, again, probably not on the BTC pair, of course, but you'd like to see this level hold both on the daily time frame and on the weekly time frame, and the daily moving average 21 as well, and that should be good news for the USDT pair as well. So drop in the comments below what altcoins you're looking at. Are you holding any of these, and what's your target, and do you think we are in an alt season, and how long do you think it's going to last? Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and I'll catch you on the next one.